Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Daily Crypto Byte. Today is Thursday, January 27th, and we've got some interesting headlines today to bring you guys. Some interesting news broke last night on Twitter. Going to dive into that. Also, we've got some news from Russia, a little bit more bullish news. We've been getting some bearish news, but Putin pushing back on that a little bit. We'll talk about that as well as dive into some price action. But before we get started, CJ, how are you doing today, my friend?
Doing well, Monty. Major indices across the board up basically 1.5%. 10-year and 30-year treasury yields down about 2 to 3%. Bitcoin up about 1% today, with Bitcoin dominance also up. I think one of the big surprises have been the DXY really breaking out like earlier this week and still continuing. So we'll jump into that and more. But I'm doing well, Monty. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well, CJ. Doing pretty well. Yesterday was a very important day with that Fed meeting, and we had some indecision, leading up to it and after it. So it's going to be interesting to see how we, today's price action responds in traditional equities, and how Bitcoin subsequently responds here today. So excited to dive into it. You want to get us started here?
Yeah, why don't we kick things off with some charts, and then we'll get into those very interesting news pieces. It's like we're going back to 2019 with the QuadrigaCX scandal. If
I
any
know.
of you guys,
I'm excited to talk about this. Yeah.
Yeah, that was boring bear market. Well, not boring, but not a lot of price action to discuss back in those days. So
Yeah.
it was a very interesting story back in the day. Starting with the S&P, from a technical perspective, pretty interesting. We got the TD sequential buy 9. We got a bullish engulfing candle following it. You have that volume basically showing that the volatility is somewhat subsiding. I think a lot of the short-term bears or short-term longs have been kind of washed out. Now kind of approaching almost a 2% increase. The RSI as well, it's coming back down closer to its actual 14-day moving average, but it is turning up now from oversold territory. So quite interesting in that regard. Really same thing across the board in terms of the major indices. If we look at the DXY, you can see that we're at TD sequential 8. Potentially we'll get some more positive price action tomorrow to create that 9 and then potentially pull back. We'll still have to see how things play out. Despite the strong DXY, though, we still have traditional stocks as well as Bitcoin holding up decent today. Some of the alts have been hit a little bit, but I mean, Bitcoin is hanging in there. Somewhat of a similar posture as the S&P. You have the TD sequential buy 9 at the bottom of the downtrend, and then you also have that wide divergence from the moving average. So we'll see if we can retest that 39 to 40,000 resistance level, but that's how the technicals are kind of looking and shaping out right now. But excited to discuss some more news items and some other things with you as well, Monty.
Yeah, let's start off with that Russia news, CJ, because it's, a little bit different than the news we're typically getting out of Russia. And just last week, the Bank of Russia came out and announced that, they were considering a all-out ban on cryptocurrencies as they saw them as, a risk to emerging markets, including Russia. But yesterday, we got some interesting news. Putin came out saying that crypto mining has some advantages in Russia. And I think he actually has some decent points. He said we have a competitive advantage here in the so-called mining. I mean, the surplus of electricity and the well-trained personnel available in the country. And, for the first part, the surplus of electricity, that is definitely true. In terms of the cost of electricity per kilowatt hour, it is significantly cheaper in Russia than most other parts of Europe and the world for that matter. So, in Russia, it's about 6 cents per kilowatt hour per house for households and about 8 cents for business. You compare that with France, it's about 4 times higher for households and businesses. So obviously, when you're dealing with an incredibly energy intensive process like Bitcoin mining, this is a big advantage. And, Putin identifying this competitive advantage is the first step to them, establishing themselves as Bitcoin miners. I think that this would be ultimately very bullish for the network. That sort of security, that sort of maintenance would be good. And also, I think it would, incentivize other governments to kind of hop into the mining game. I think that it would even put light a fire on the United States government to perhaps get involved, control some of the hash power. This is a very important thing, and I think going forward, we'll see more and more, pushes from various countries to get involved in crypto mining. So, encouraging there, a nice change of pace from last week's news coming out of Russia. And, hopefully it has a positive impact on price. I saw some people on Twitter, discussing the possible implications of this. And I think a lot of people think it could be big news. When we saw, China really kind of embrace Bitcoin mining back at the start of 2019, that led to a nice spike in price as well. So perhaps we'll see a similar thing here. We'll continue to monitor hash rate, but ultimately, I think that's a bullish thing coming out of Russia and coming out of Putin. So good stuff there. But I want to move on to this next article, CJ, because I think this is the more juicy article here today. And yeah, should we dive right into it?
Yeah, absolutely. You're very passionate talking about this myself this morning. If you guys were around in 2019, you probably remember the story of QuadrigaCX, where basically the founder, Gerald Cotton, disappeared with $169 million, and nothing really ever was resolved or actually happened until today, following the Wonderland time debacle, that rug pull, which occurred earlier in the week. There's actually a connection between QuadrigaCX and Wonderland time, and that is through this individual, Michael Petrin. Monty, you want to tell us a little bit more about this?
Yeah, so first off, we'll start with talking about the price action that we've seen in time. It's down 64% today following this news. Not too surprising given the negative implications of this announcement. So this news was brought to our attention by Zach.eth. Great follow on Twitter. He's kind of a detective. He is known for kind of unmasking people that would rather be anonymous, which is actually very useful in this space, and I'm about to show you why. So he's been going back and forth with Daniel Sesta. We've talked about Daniel before. He's actually a very active DeFi developer. He's been involved in projects like Wonderland, projects like Spell, and many others. The Ohm fork he was heavily involved in. And by many people, he's considered a highly trustworthy individual in the space. But this news, is starting to kind of change my personal perception of, how I look at Daniel and also the way I view his projects. So this is let's start from this tweet right here. So this needs to be shared. OX Saifu, who's a co-founder of QuadrigaCX, which is the company that did this rug pull way back in 2019, which was a very, very strange occurrence. But this was found out to be Saifu is heavily involved with the Wonderland project as well, and that was confirmed via DMs with Daniel. So if we take a look at these, Zach says, I came across something odd about that. And he says about Saifu, he's a Quadriga guy. And Daniel says, I cannot confirm, but I have thought about this a lot, implying that, he kind of had suspicions that this guy was, in fact, Michael Patron, which is not even his real name. It's Omar something. So Zach says yes. And, they're wondering how he's going to handle it if he comes out. He says he doesn't have an answer, but we found out today. So let's take a look at how Daniel responded to this. Daniel says, today, allegations about our team member OX Saifu will circulate. I want everyone to know that I was aware of this and decided that the past of an individual doesn't determine their future. I chose to value the time we spent together without knowing his past more than anything. He goes on to talk about how, he believes in giving people second chances, which is, all well and good. But I think this is total BS. I think this is, a cop out. And when it comes to crypto and, when it comes to managing the capital of other people, trustworthiness is very important. And, just because, DeFi is anonymous doesn't mean we shouldn't be, looking into the moral integrity of the people that are founding these projects. And to say that this guy, giving second chances is something that we should do, I agree. But this isn't even his second chance. This would be his fifth chance. In 2005, he pled guilty to credit and bank fraud. 2007, burglary, theft, and computer fraud. 2018, he lost access to 115 million in customer funds. And all of this, he's changed his identity several times. Even still to this day, like right now, he's moving funds off of Wonderland, and he's moving funds on various protocols. So, this guy still has an incredible amount of capital locked in these blockchains, over $400 million that's moved in the last 24 hours. But I think Andre Cronje, who we talk about a lot, said it very well. There are lines, a history of consistent fraud, theft, and malicious behavior that isn't a mistake. That's intent. That is, you can use those past instances of behavioral, discrepancies to make assumptions about his future behavior. That is not, discrimination or anything like that, especially when you're talking about trusting them with your capital. So having Saifu manage funds, especially user funds, can be argued as negligence. And I completely agree. Let me give that a quick like, in fact, because, that's what it comes down to. I think Daniel was negligent. The fact that he knew that, this nefarious character was involved in the projects, he chose to not disclose that to the people investing capital in this protocol, I think was very, very irresponsible, and quite frankly, really changed my perception of Daniel, who formerly I respected, and now I think, I really do think that was reckless, and I think he is liable for this. So big news. I think that we haven't heard the last of this yet. It will likely hit some major news outlets today and continue to pick up steam here. If you hold Wonderland time tokens, I know some of you in the community, had been looking at that. I would encourage you to get out of it, because, this is the type of thing that can send a project to zero. And people will hold on to this thing to zero. They will be convinced that the fundamentals will save this project. It doesn't matter if you have these sort of nefarious characters controlling, a large majority of the supply, and even controlling elements of the protocol. That is, the one of the first things that can lead to a coin going to zero. And, I think we're seeing it play out here right in front of us. So very interesting stuff. Excited to see how this plays out. But really, I think it's a huge black eye for Daniel and for Wonderland. Your thoughts, CJ?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I thought you laid it out very well. That's kind of the risk of DeFi in many instances nowadays. So, those are the things that regulators want to clean up, but I don't know necessarily if they can, other than just proving, malicious behavior by a specific individual. But if they're anonymous and they can't be tracked down, it's difficult, obviously. But yeah, not a whole lot to say.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not like these are all things that are happening like in the past. Even his current, address, saifu.eth, he's sending money from Michael Patron personal account to himself.
Yeah, I
This is,
saw that. How do you have why would you keep your personal, why would you name your ledger your actual name? Anyways, whatever.
yeah, I don't know, because he probably didn't even think that there would be any possibility of him developing future projects. He thought, I'm going to rug this project and I'll be out. I can retire. But now he's back with a different name, doing the exact same thing he's done in the past. Very, very concerning. And yeah, it's the type of thing that, part of me hoped was left in the past in crypto. And now that, we become more mainstream, more legitimate, these things would happen less and less. But the fact of the matter is, there will always be these nefarious characters looking to make a quick buck, looking to profit off the, intentions of others. And this guy has proven that this is, his intentions several times. So concerning stuff, but also it's kind of fun to watch play out, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's definitely not boring. But thank you guys all for watching today. Monty, appreciate that breakdown. Very interesting. If you guys would like to know our own trade insights, as well as join a community of traders in our live forum, as well as our trading education curriculum and pro charting platform, you can check out the link in the description below and try the first week for just $7. Also, if you like the content today, please consider liking and subscribing, as that does help us very much. But I hope you guys have a wonderful day in the world wherever you are. And thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.